Welcome back, everybody, to me talking about the Wheel of Time. And it's time to finish the fires of heaven. They've burned out, I've burned out, it's time to talk about it. We're basically done. I finished it yesterday, and then I couldn't actually get to recording a video because burned out? I don't know. Stuff happened. And now I'm trying to do it today. I tried it earlier and then got distracted, so we'll give it another go. We'll see how it goes this time around. All right? Cheers. All right. So, I'll go through both plot lines that we still have, talk about the good, talk about the bad, talk about the ugly, and then give my general thoughts on this novel, what I think, and where I'm at right now with The Wheel of the Time. All right. So we still have our only two plot lines, one of them being the Aes Sedai plot line, the girl plot line, the other one is the boy plot line, so to speak. Yes, there's men in the girl plot line, and yes, there's women in the boy plot line, but, never mind. And the boy plot line is okay, the girl plot line, not so much, but that was kind of to be expected, right? All right, let's go at it. Let's start with the girl plot line. So basically what happens is, Nynaeve and Elaine and gang show up at Solidar, get taken down a peg or two by the Aes Sedai there, and then Nynaeve, while teaching Swan Sunshade to wander around in Dreamland with the Terangreal, gets into another exchange of opinions with Mogadin, transports herself and Mogadin to Caemlyn to take part in the big showdown with Rand and Ravine. That's the long and short of it. So what's interesting here and what's not? Basically, most of it is not interesting. There's some fun things there. The way in which Nynaeve figures out or explains how Mogadin is actually with Nynaeve and gang in Solidar is kind of a cool thing. And the way Nynaeve and Birgitta talk about cowardice is another interesting one. Also, Nynaeve fighting with Swan Sanche, because they're basically very similar in personality, is another one that is interesting. And well done. Not well done, but okay-ish. Now, what do I mean by that? It's Nynaeve slowly figuring out that she maybe tries to overcompensate and control and bully and all of these things because she's secretly slightly afraid. And you notice I'm using the word afraid instead of being a coward, because I don't like the fact that fear is called cowardice here, because you know what? That's shitty to anyone who has any form of anxiety to call them cowards. It's a problematic word, to put it mildly. And there's probably a full video in how fantasy language in fantasy novels is harmful to mental health and other things in there. I get pissed off every time someone calls someone else a blind fool in these books. Because, yeah, I'm blind and I'm a fool, but I don't think those two are necessarily connected. You know what I mean. Apart from that, we once again get Robert Jordan's Bobby J's spanking fetish. And you know what? I don't mind Bobby J having a kink there. It's fine. Your kink, I don't kink shame. You're good. But stakes are high in these books. Those people, for example, Mogadin, she's a Forsaken. She's just about the baddest thing out there under the Dark One. for now at least, unless, until Bobby J pulls out something else out of his ass. We'll see when that will happen. But, until then, that's exactly what she is. She's supposed to be super fucking powerful, and the best that can ever happen to her, or like the worst that happens to her in these books for now, is someone puts a collar on her and spanks her. I mean, give me a fucking break. That's just like... Men get to kill other men, women just get spanked. There's something in there that just feels incongruous to me. It's like, apart from like it kind of being a bit, cringy or whatever, it just doesn't work for me in a story level, because if that's the only consequence, we have to... I will never ever fear for like any women actually fearing consequences again, because all the consequences of their actions right now seem to be they get spanked with nettles sometimes even. I don't know. I just, I know people, mention the whole spanking issue a lot, and it sure is in there a lot, and I know it's easy to make fun of it and whatnot, and I try not to do that. I just want to point out that apart from anything else that you might think about it, it just really doesn't make for a good story, because it severely limits the consequences for female characters for all of their actions, if all that ever happens is spanking in a slightly gratuitous way for the reader. It's like, I don't know, nah, whatever. So there's that aspect in there that I find not problematic, but detracts from the enjoyment of the book there, because I don't fear for any of those characters at this point. So yeah, we have that part. What else? Female agency is another one that, and I'll talk about that when we come to Rand and the Maidens of the Spear, and then I'll try the Brigitte thing in there as well, because it kind of goes down to the same thing. It just feels less problematic to me when it's Nynaeve and Brigitte talking, because both are women. And it, while still being gendered in a lot of ways, it kind of is different once we talk about Rand or Matt or any of the other men having issues with killing women. And I get it. I have issues with killing women. However, I do also have issues with killing men. I have issues with killing people in general. And that's apparently not how this works. So yeah. Apart from that, well, another one of those seals is broken. I guess all of them are broken at this point, or like most of them are broken at this point, so that's just what we have to live with. I mean, the next one is called Lord of Chaos, so I assume stuff will happen there that is going to happen in a big way. We will see. I'll start it either today or on Monday. We'll find out. All right. Enough there. There is a conversation that is interesting between Elaine and Min about loving and maybe sharing Rand. That, I don't know. See, the problem is that is the idea of destiny in these books, right? It's like the fact that two people fall in love with the same third person is something that happens every day, I assume, in this world. And sometimes in these situations, those two parties will have a civil talk, and I don't know, come to some form of agreement. Like, I don't know, either one makes the other one back off, or both back off, and they're like, fuck it, our friendship is more important than getting it on with someone. There's other outcomes, of course. It's sort of what a large swath of literature and movies is all about. I just feel the way it is handled here is just extremely weird and awkward. It feels like Robert Jordan has never ever come close to that experience, and has probably never ever in his life talked about love, I guess. Or at least thinks that women talk about it in a fundamentally different way than men do. Plus, the idea is like, I've fallen in love with that person and I have literally no control over all of that. It's just like, it's all predestined. I'm fucked. Well, not yet, because Rand is with Avienda, which we both don't fully know or understand, right? It's that, like, that passive acceptance of fate that kind of fucks me over here. It's weird because so far it's only the women, right? We have those three boys. We have Perrin. We have what's his name, Matt. We have Rand, and they're officially all Taviran. I wonder if like women get like a right to also be Taviran, because up to a point, I would say someone like Egwene or they influence the pattern enough to also be sort of, if you want to have that idea of Taviran, which sucks in general, right? And like, even like, Matt is trying to fight against being Paul and Rand's, plot armor and stuff. He tries to fight against it, but the women all are like, yeah, whatever, fuck, it's Taviran. I guess I'd better meekly wander along and see what happens. And that's just, once again, that whole, like, the way women are portrayed, or the way Robert Jordan thinks of women, is just ridiculous. It's just, like, and harmful. But apart from that, not that much going down in those books, in those chapters. It just feels a bit like, at the end of the day, this is a book about mostly Rand and a bit of Matt. But it's mostly about Rand, and the women are just pushed around to show ankles, bosoms, and then be somewhere once it matters. That's basically all that happens there. And it's something that has happened before in these books. It wasn't as egregious in The Shadow Rising, where the whole Tanchiko plotline did actually, involve some actual actions by the women. The female characters, main female characters, and Fail did some stuff in that part of the plot as well. But here in this one, the women are extremely passive, or like all their actions seem to be fairly don't matter, and like have very little impact, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. They're just like pushed around to do acrobatics so we can imagine all their bits and pieces swirl around. If that makes any sense. So let's look at the boys, shall we? It's clearly the part that does, has more action, and I think parts of it are actually good, but only parts. While, for me, the battle around Cairhien was sort of the best thing that happened there in the entire book. We now have the aftermath, Rand trying to play the game of houses, of which we have spoken before, because it does not fucking exist. Once again, Robert Jordan thinks of intrigue like someone who has just come into fucking kindergarten and tries to band together with like two kindergarten friends to steal the fucking building blocks or Legos from a third boy. That's the level of intrigue we see in these books. Only because it's also Robert Jordan, it's all about the boobs, right? So we see that we have that one older lady of Cairhien who is sending all these other beautiful women to Rand to seduce Rand, because that's exactly the only way you can do intrigue in Cairhien, is by getting Rand laid. And Rand is trying to drive them insane. Not drive them insane, but like make them afraid of him being insane. And we need to talk about the depiction of madness in these books at some point as well, because it's awful. Kind of ties into the same thing, like how a lot of fantasy books in that area do harm to mental health by talking about stuff like calling any form of fear cowardice, calling any form of like other like mental health issues madness. And that's maybe not a good look, I would say. All right. Anyway, let's sum up what actually happened. So Rand does a bit of like intriguing, and then decides to get his ass over to Caemlyn to kill Ravine, because he has heard that Morghese is dead. And she's like, I gotta avenge Elaine's mom because that's sort of my job. So he figures that that's sort of what he wants to do, and then things get kind of out of hand because we now officially learn that Matt's girlfriend, sort of girlfriend, is a dark friend, Aiel. I've forgotten her name. It's not Melandra, but it's something like that. Yeah. Anyway, she tries to kill Matt. Matt kills her. Matt is like, oh shit, I've killed a woman. I can't do that because killing women is wrong. Killing other people, however, is totally fine. Yeah. We'll get to that in a minute. Now, where are we going with this? Next morning, Brand is like, all right, let's get this done. He meets with Moiraine, Avienda, and Egwene. Moiraine is like, all right, let's first go down to the harbor, to the docks, because I got to show you something. Also, here's a letter from me that you can read later, and one from me to Tom, which you should give to him, because foreshadowing. Sort of. All right. It does get better, I know. And, well, they go down to the harbor. Dark friend Cardir is there. Lanfear shows up. Cardir knows, because men know these kind of things, or at least Cardir knows, like, they can see if a woman has fucked, because that's exactly visible. If she has done this, like, a couple of weeks ago, he can still see that in her eyes. Now, I'm obviously not very focused on the visual aspects of these kind of things, but I highly doubt that it's possible to see one sexual intercourse months later or weeks later. That just doesn't happen. However, he's like, all right, I just know, so I tell Lanfear. Lanfear, because she's a woman, goes all emotional and tries and goes crazy, runs amok, basically. And the problem gets solved by Moiraine tackling her into the red gateway to another world that Matt went through before. All right. So, how will these things go? How are we going on from here? Well, that stuff happens. Then, well, everyone considers both of them dead. Rand is like, well, fuck it, I'm going to Camelin anyway. And we get like a big shootout with Ravine. And at the end of it, Ravine is dead. We're basically done with it. Now we get like an epilogue that's not too bad. Now there's a bunch of things that are problematic with this. First of all, like, Lanfear is supposed to be, once again, a Forsaken, a very bad one, if not the mastermind among the Forsaken, smart all the way up to there. But as soon as there is passion involved, she just loses all her rational behavior and becomes crazy passionate, emotional, and aggressive. Which, is something of a stereotype, and not a good one. Not that there are good stereotypes. It's just ridiculous. And it's like, yeah, of course. Millennium-old Lanfear, 3,000 and something year old Lanfear will just like go, all right, you fucked a woman, Rand, that I keep thinking is my already lost love from way back then. I'm gonna kill her and everyone else. It doesn't fly. It just feels... As I said, it's a stereotype and not a good one that women are extremely emotional, passionate, well, mostly emotional, and forget all rationality when jealousy comes up. That's not how this works, man. At least not with someone of that level. Right? Just not... Nah. Well, what can you say? The other interesting thing is obviously that everyone considers Moiraine and Lanfear dead. I don't. They will come back. I just make this statement right now. Moiraine and Lanfear will both come back in some way or another, because it's a portal. Yes, there's smoke and fire and stuff, but it's still a fucking portal, and we know it is because Matt went through. Matt came back. People should know this. And yeah, the bond between Lan and Moiraine is shattered, but or currently not active. But it's still, she's teleported to a different planet for all I know. Maybe that can snap that kind of bond between water and Aes Sedai. Just maybe. Well, anyway. then we all go to, we have the conversation that we need to talk about, which is the Maiden Conversation. And that is exactly that. The Maidens of the Spear are pissed off with Rand because Rand is trying to not get them into battles because, he's afraid of seeing women die. And this is sort of where we need to have us the talk. All right, the talk. It has been mentioned before quite a few times that Matt and Rand and other people in these books cannot see women die or cannot hurt women. Well, apparently spanking them is fine, but nothing beyond that. Killing is not an option. Killing men is totally fine, though. That happens all the time. They don't seem to have much compunction around it. But killing women is not okay. And now, so here's a bunch of things. There's on the one hand, I think that is clearly because Robert Jordan is uncomfortable with it. Which I assume is because Robert Jordan is, conservative. It's also like the early 90s. It kind of reminds me of the Dresden Files, where Harry Dresden's always, I can't see women hurt. Yeah, I know that's chauvinist, but that's just the way I am. It's like, yeah, it is chauvinist. And it's fucked up. Because, either you consider death in general death, and killing problematic on its own, because a human life is a human life, and you should not actually do that kind of crap, or you don't. If you, however, say one specific gender does it's worse with one specific gender over the other, it is because you adhere to a very specific form of gender stereotype. You put women on a pedestal, maybe, or think of them as weaker, or whatever, that they need your protection. It kind of goes into the whole Madonna horror complex kind of thing, which kind of makes sense when you call them the Maidens of the Spear and have all that weird side to it. And what I find interesting about it is that apart from the fact that it's kind of annoying because it's a bit awkward and put front and center so much in general, is that you can clearly see Robert Jordan struggling with it when he has those interactions with the Maidens of the Spear, talking to Rand and them trying to explain that it is their choice and not his choice. So he's aware of how problematic it is. He's still and this is sort of the problem, right? Is it shows not only in Rand's and Matt behaviors, because it's fine if you're tackling that issue by having a character display that sort of preferable or whatever, that skewed treatment of women. Having chauvinist, having sexist, and having misogynist characters in your books is totally fine. You can explore all kinds of things. The problem is if their behavior is then mirrored in the entirety of the book, because see what we spoke about earlier, women just get spanked. So we can assume that the author is sharing those specific beliefs. And that's sort of where I see the problem with Wheel of Time, that it's not Matt and Rand that have problems with killing women, which, fine. But it's Robert Jordan who has a problem with killing female characters in his books. And that's a different thing. And then we need to look at that, because the argument remains the same. But now we have to argue with Robert Jordan as the writer or the author, and not with Matt and Rand. And, that's sort of the problem there. I'll keep an eye on it. Maybe at some point women actually get killed. Or, it's not made it's made less of a big deal, because that's sort of the point. He pointed out explicitly that they have problems with it. A lot. So we can clearly feels like Robert Jordan is uncomfortable with it. Well, yeah. Anyway, then we come to the final showdown. They teleport to Camelin. There's a big battle. Everyone dies. Rand gets mad and shoots tons of balefire around. We get a super boring battle. And at the end of it, everyone is still alive. Because, as we learned early on, balefire kind of burns backwards in time. And, well, it frays the pattern and all of that kind of crap. But it also can make things that have happened before kind of, it can reverse them in a way, with dire consequences, which I really hope we will see in Lord of Chaos, because at the end of this one we don't see those like negative side effects of it yet. Apart from that, the battle is boring. I mean, it's kind of what I've said before, right? It's people running around shooting big lasers at each other, and if like any like first hit with those kind of things will just kill the other person, you cannot really escalate. You can just like destroy the scenery, and I'm like, yeah, well, whatever. So that battle just was really boring. Even the idea of it moving to Telayan Riyadh and Nynaeve and Mogadin helping, while being interesting in a way, is still kind of, I don't know. Interesting theory, it still boils down to Rand running around in the palace. We're getting boring descriptions of the palace and lasers shooting around. Yeah, whatever. The only interesting bit was, I think, when they're in the dream world of Luce Theron trying to take over. But I still feel like the whole like Luce Theron trying to take over kind of thing is sort of left going nowhere. I'm not sure if it'll come back in Lord of Chaos, and we'll have more of an exploration of that, because right now it feels like, is Rand going mad, or is this the actual Luce Theron taking over because of the whole like reincarnation thing that was never really fully explained kind of thing? We don't know. It just remains that kind of thing. So apart from that, I just love, the only good thing is that Ravine, being the evil one, has obviously a magical piranha tank, which, that's cool. That's style, is what I say. I would say it is. And apart from that, well, as I said, it's a way too long, boring battle, because yeah, it's difficult to make those actually cool and epic. It's sort of like not epic, but you know what I mean. Impactful, meaningful, and interesting to read, because just scaling up and doesn't make it better. We end with, some things, which is Rand is taking action. He's like, I'm gonna collect men that can channel, because I wanna, build an army. And this final battle, Armageddon, which is Tarmangaden, is not that far off. Maybe we should just like accept the fact that they will not go mad quickly enough for this to matter. That's an interesting aspect, so I'm good with that. Natail gets killed by someone, which is sort of like Robert Jordan trying his his subtle fingers at what we call a cliffhanger, I guess. And that's sort of where the whole thing kind of fizzles out. Right, let's kind of look at the final thing. So, I still think so far The Shadow Rising is the best one I've read. The Fires of Heaven did not work for me in a lot of ways. It's still solid. It's still Robert Jordan trying to tell a different story than those first three novels, so I have respect for that. I missed Perrin. Well, can't have everything, I guess. I really hope he's back in Lord of Chaos. I hope so. I assume so. The split just didn't really work. Yet the pace has noticeably slowed down, because if you look at the entire book, and it's not a thin book, there's one battle and one end fight. Not much else. The most of it is just people wandering around spouting nonsense about Robert Jordan's, philosophical beliefs on gender issues and stuff like that. Women get to do even less. They just get to wander around and, gratuitously shake their body parts into the camera, basically. And that's it. Yeah. And then we just like have a faux death like the one of Moiraine and Lanfear. And that's just all of what happens there. And I'm like, I don't know. I really hope things will change in the next book. There's once again, there's good ideas in there. The idea of like having the balefire go backwards in time. It sets up stuff, but we don't see any of the consequences apart from everyone still being alive, sort of, at the end of the book. But we don't see any negative consequences. People not remembering stuff or whatever. We don't see that yet. So I'll reserve judgment on it until I've started Lord of Chaos and see if stuff, kind of changes there. We will see. Until then, yeah, it's not that good a book. And the longer I'm reading these, the more those aspects of, gender identity and things like that, the longer, yeah, the more they just really fucking annoy me, because it's getting, it feels like it's getting stronger. It's coming through more and more. Maybe that's because the pace slows down and there's more time for these kind of things. Because, when you have like a full-on battle or whatever, there's little time to talk about it. But with so little happening in this book, there's more time to explore those like fucked up ideologies. And that's sort of my problem there. Now the next one is larger and longer, so I'm a bit afraid it will go in the same direction. But we'll see. So yeah, until then, have a great weekend and all, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.